So I guess you can say Mortal Kombat Annihilation really annihilated this movie series. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel and another entry in my Mortal Kombat review series. Today we're talking about the second film, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts on this film were if you've already seen it, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these reviews, as it helps me out immensely by getting my channel out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases, older films, hidden gems, and so much more on a near daily basis. But let's jump right into it and let's talk about Mortal Kombat Annihilation. This takes place where the first movie left off, with the Earthrealm warriors living a short period of peace, when evil forces from another dimension come to invade and wreak havoc on Earth. They are guided by the forces of Outworld leader Shao Kahn and his generals such as Motaro, Raiden, Ermac, Sheeva, and Sindel. Now Liu Kang, Raiden, Jax, Sonya, and Kitana must defeat Shao Kahn in 6 days before the Earthrealm merges with the Outworld. As always with my reviews of older films, this will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen Mortal Kombat Annihilation, this is your spoiler warning. Go watch the movie, and then come back to this. But anyway, here we go. Now directed by John R. Leonetti, who went on to direct films such as the first Annabelle movie and Netflix's The Silence, while this picks up directly after the first film, it has a totally different look and feel than that film, with a different tone, a heavier emphasis on CGI, and most of the actors being recast. Now, there doesn't seem to be a story as to why or what happened. It doesn't seem like this had a particularly troubled production or anything. It just seemed that most of the actors either chose to commit to other projects or didn't like the script and turned it down, which I can understand. And we'll get the elephant in the room right out of the way, as this is generally considered not just one of the worst video game adaptations ever, but one of the worst movies of all time, period. It's actually the first movie on IMDb's bottom 100 list that isn't a new release that I'm actually discussing on here, so that's cool. And this actually fared so poorly that, while a third film was initially planned, it was scrapped due to the poor reception of this. And I'll just get this out of the way. Yes, this movie is awful, but I'm not going to do a ranting or a raving style video just screaming about how bad it is. In the early days of the internet, where most movie discussions involved just dunking on bad films, this was one of the biggest punching bags. And that's a style of review that's been done to death and that I don't feel like contributing to it. Plus, I never even fully realized how bad this was until I actually watched it, then went back and started watching all the old videos of everyone piling onto it. Mainly because I had the understanding for the longest time anyway that there were no good video game adaptations, at least until the last few years, though as I said, I do like the original Mortal Kombat. But my point is, I just lumped this in with all the other bad video game movies and didn't realize this is actually a whole other level of bad. Though what I will say is, despite this being an absolutely terrible movie, the sad thing about it is, when you read interviews with the filmmakers at the time around its release, this seemed to just be a really misguided effort that was made with good intentions. They were given an even bigger budget for this than the first film, and they all seemed excited to expand upon the world of this universe, especially wanting to cater even more to fans of the games. Which I'll commend them for, as the point of a sequel is to go bigger and bolder than the original, and they attempt to do so here. So, in a way, I feel bad, as it's just a shame how this totally missed the mark, which is kind of an understatement here, despite the intentions being good. So the film actually starts with a recap of the first film, in the style of a previously on recap that you'd see at the beginning of a new episode of a TV show.
Liu Kang and a few chosen fighters from the Earthrealm defeated Outworld sorcerer Shang Tsung. According to the rules of Mortal Kombat, their victory preserved the safety of the Earth for one more generation.
And while it's good to give us a refresher on what happened, it makes this even sadder, as when it cuts to the new footage, you can immediately tell there's such a dip in quality. So I guess we'll start with the CGI for this. Whereas the first movie went more for practical effects, including using an animatronic for Goro, which I still think is impressive for what it is, this instead opts to go all in on the CGI. And there's no sugarcoating it, it's just straight up laughably awful. I don't try to be hyperbolic with my reviews, but it's quite possibly some of the worst CGI I can recall seeing in a movie. The backgrounds are almost entirely green screen. I think very little of it was actually shot on location, and you can even see the lines of the digital backgrounds cutting into the actors at various points. It looks like something that would have been made on Windows Movie Maker back in the day. Seriously. And it's all accompanied by some of the clunkiest fight scenes I've seen in a while, where nearly everything is these rapid fire cuts for nearly every moment, many of which are backflips and jumps that just cause this feel of disorientation most of the time. And I honestly don't get why this was the case, especially with the bigger budget. And there really seems to be no explanation for it. I've been looking up interviews and there's no clear answer from what I can find. But yeah, there's no getting around it. It's just not good. And some other examples of really bad effects include this one camera effect done a number of times where whatever it is that's going after one of our protagonists won't be seen, but we'll see it in the first person point of view shot in the vein of Hardcore Henry. Most notably, there's a scene where Liu Kang gets attacked, and we'll see him struggle against his attacker, but it's Robin Shao, who plays Liu Kang, struggling with the camera in this comically over-the-top manner. And it's actually pretty funny. And with that, we'll next jump into the cast. As I said, most of the actors from the first film have been replaced, with the exception of Shao as Liu Kang and Talisa Soto as Kitana. However, Keith Cook, who played Reptile in the first movie, returns now as Sub-Zero's brother, now also going by Sub-Zero, which is a thing in the original games, though it comes off a bit awkwardly here.
You killed my older brother.
So why did you help us?
I helped her, because legend has it the princess is the key to stopping Khan's plot.
You've been following us. Why?
And more on those awkward explanations in a bit. Otherwise, Raiden, Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, Jax, and Scorpion, the latter of whom somehow gets resurrected, are all recast. And unfortunately, most of them really aren't all that good. In fact, even the acting by Shao and Soto isn't all that good either, despite them being fine in the first film. And I don't completely blame the actors themselves necessarily for these performances, because they're all given really awkward lines of dialogue to read, sometimes filled with clunky exposition or jarring swings in personality. And while this was sometimes the case in the first movie, that film also went for a purposefully goofier tone with a clear sense of fun, so it worked there. While both films were made as a way of attempting to honor the original video games, this attempts to take itself much more seriously, which leads to this problem. While in the original, someone acting in an odd manner is a little forgivable because the movie's meant to be fun, here, because there's an emphasis on things like world building and seemingly more high-stakes serious consequences, when we do get that awkwardness, it's very off-putting. The only one who I kinda sorta liked here is James Remar, who takes over as Raiden from Christopher Lambert, and I think it's partially because I do generally enjoy him as an actor, but I also don't want to say he's putting in the most effort of everyone necessarily. It just seems he was able to take what he got and made it work to some degree a little better. The only thing I'd say is he does play the role a lot differently than how Lambert played Raiden, leading to some character inconsistencies. Lambert's Raiden was a lot more casual, which leads to a very scene-chewing way of him delivering his lines, while Remar plays Raiden a lot more straight-faced. That is, until the halfway point when he gets this bizarre makeover that makes him look like he traveled back to the 80s.
Never give up hope. At least not so early in the fight.
Raiden?
It's a new look.
The only other actors who do try bringing some of that hammy, over-the-top style of delivery similar to the first film are the villains, and we get a lot more of them this time around than we did in the original movie. This time, our main villain is Shao Kahn, played by Brian Thompson, along with his father Shinnok, as well as Baraka, Smoke, Noob Saibot, Rain, Jade, and a few other characters, many of whom were introduced in either the second, third, or fourth video games, which were all out by the time this was released. I'm really not going to get into each and every character, as most of them are pretty disposable here, all getting dispatched after one fight or so, in addition to Johnny Cage, who, despite being a main character in the first film, is killed off in the opening scene. Now I do appreciate that most of them try going for this hammy delivery. The only thing is here, due to the many tonal inconsistencies in this movie, they come off as a little screechy and grating after a while, on top of the fact that the costume designs for many of these characters look like costumes you'd pick up at the Halloween store.
If those bars could keep me away from you, Sheeva, I would welcome them.
I'd say Brian Thompson's the best of the bunch, mainly because of his comically warbly delivery, and it seemed like he was legitimately having some fun with this, but that's it. Though we do get one brilliant line uttered by Kitana's mother Sindel, which is probably the best known line in this movie, and it was one that I genuinely appreciated.
You're alive. Too bad you will die.
But as for the plot, while you don't necessarily go to a Mortal Kombat movie for a deep, meaningful story, as I mentioned, it was the filmmakers' intentions to expand upon the world of the game, and there is something of a lore present in each of the games that carries over with each sequel, and this film tries tapping into that. Unfortunately, again, it comes off as very awkward, and a lot of it goes by either unexplained or not clarified. The main thing being why Shao Kahn decides to wait 6 days in order to destroy the Earth, which is never explained other than to just force conflict, along with one plot development that when the worlds merge, Raiden will just lose his powers for some reason. Again, that wasn't totally clear. There's also the fact that Liu Kang has to find this one warrior named Nightwolf, and he has to pass 3 tests in order to achieve this new power, but he only gets to 2 before that subplot's abandoned, and we never find out the 3rd. And besides major plot details like that, even when it comes down to moments in specific scenes, where maybe it's not the plot development itself that's the issue, the way these characters interact with one another or react to certain things just doesn't seem natural. Like, when we get introduced to Jax, this is the first time Sonya, who's his partner, sees him since the beginning of the first movie. And we see him with what he's known for in the games, which are his bionic arms. And Sonya just goes, "What did you get yourself into?" Like he's a child who's causing mischief or something, and after a one-sentence explanation, it's quickly brushed off. And even though the two are close friends, we then get this very forced sequence in the middle of the movie when they're traveling in the desert, and Sonya hasn't explained anything at all to Jax as to where they're going, who they're looking for, or anything. And even though these two are supposed to be close friends, we then get this trope that's seen in so many other movies of two friends who just get into an argument just to force some more conflict. Sonya's angry at Jax for no real reason and just refuses to tell him anything. Again, for no real reason. She mentions how it's unfair that Johnny Cage died, despite not telling Jax who Johnny is, as well as not telling him any of the events from the previous film. And it just leads to 5 minutes or so of petty squabbling between them until they eventually encounter Liu Kang. Because that's what we want to see in a Mortal Kombat movie. Petty squabbling. I get that maybe they were trying to give everyone these character-driven moments, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate that, but it almost never feels like this film builds emotionally on whatever came before it. A lot of these attempts at character development will come out of left field, and it leads to a lot of jarring tonal shifts, and in turn, it gives us an unfortunately awful experience. While Mortal Kombat Annihilation was made with the intention of giving the fans more, it ultimately missed its mark at every turn. The story's borderline incoherent, it takes itself way too seriously at times, the acting's not all that good, and the CGI is absolutely terrible. It's the sort of movie you can probably enjoy on a so bad it's good level, but that's about the best I can say about it. Mortal Kombat Annihilation gets a 1.5 out of 10. Part of me feels bad for giving this such a low score because I really think this was made with good intentions. And it's not like offensive or anything, it really is harmless. Just also really, really bad. Well, what are you going to do about it, I guess? But stay tuned, before my review of the reboot, I do want to discuss the direct-to-video animated movie Scorpion's Revenge, which was released last year and I just totally missed it. So keep an eye for that, coming soon. So let me know, did you see Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you like this one at all? What's the worst video game movie that you've seen? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching everyone, and keep having fun with film.